Hello, everybody. How are we feeling after Oregon comes through at the end on the road, shorthanded? There are so many great things to say about this game. So Oregon beats Iowa. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am indeed still fired up because, yes, it is that time once again for a reaction episode of Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every game post Oregon getting a big time dub. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all for helping make that possible. I have so many thoughts that will not be contained to this show. I have no idea how long this show is going for because I have so many thoughts. I will indeed be tearing the officiating to shreds. It was an embarrassment for the Big Ten, and Oregon won anyway. A complete and utter embarrassment for the Big Ten, and Oregon won anyway. Let's start with the hero of the day. Atticus Ice Cold Sappington. With cold, what I have ice in this cup because that's how I enjoy drinking water for my second segment sips or for not my second segment sips, just in general. Water colder than that. I think that the water in Atticus Sappington's veins was just drained from a glacier in the Arctic. Stepped up in horrifically hard conditions. Both special teams. I mean, Iowa had the safety early on, of course, but both special teams, I was pretty impressed at the lack of mistakes given how hard it was. He goes on the road, Atticus Sappington. There is no fallback option. It is you are winning this game for the Ducks right now, or Oregon's losing. And this is a very different tone that I'm taking on the show. And he's not hitting a chip shot. This is 39 yards in the rain, in the wind, and he did not waver for a moment with that ball in the air. Once it left his foot, knew he had it. The absolute guts, intestinal fortitude required to step up in that moment with all of those factors at play. You just cannot overstate how much of a big-time kick that was by Atticus Sappington. Immediate legend. Immediate legend. What an incredible football game. I want to tip my cap to Iowa. I want to tip my cap to Iowa fans. They are great. The Wave is the best tradition in all of college football. I loved getting to watch that. It was really, really cool. And Iowa is an awesome place to go. But holy smokes, Oregon reigns for today. Because that was an incredible football game. On a day where throwing wasn't easy for anyone, and Oregon struggled as anyone really would in those conditions, they found a way. And for the Ducks to have run for 261 yards, this Iowa run defense, talked all week about how good it's been, tops in the Big Ten, 261 over 7 yards a carry. Over 7 yards. The offensive line, the running backs. I will talk about Will Stein later in the show because we are keeping it upbeat and positive right now because there's a lot of that to go around. Oregon saves control of its own playoff fate with this win because of Atticus Sappington's magical right leg. Please don't let that get hurt between now and whenever Oregon plays next. All the injuries that Oregon had. Friday, I got several messages saying that Trent was never allowed to do a crossover again. I can assure you that's not going to happen. Trent's a great guy. I'm never going to say anything ever again. And I didn't, by the way, earlier this week, but I'm never going to say anything again about the health of Oregon at any point in the season. I'm just not going to do it. Not going to do it. Not going to be held responsible for that by even one Oregon fan out there. I will not. By the way, someone just asked this question here in the YouTube. What was worse, the injuries or the refs? The refs, by so far. They were so bad. And Oregon won anyway. And what I say all the time with regards to officiating, I'll have more thoughts later, but I don't expect officials to get it right all the time because it's clearly too hard of a job for them. I expect them to get the big stuff right, and they missed the big stuff in this game. That was what was really, really frustrating. And for Oregon to be shorthanded, and the news and plenty of fans were in semi-panic mode going into this game, and I understood it. When you hear DeCorian Moore's out, maybe for the season, maybe not. Sounds like it's not for the season, but I don't know if he's playing next week against Minnesota. Shouldn't need it, but oh well. Kenyon Sadiq out, was questionable going into it. Did not play. Jamari Johnson stepped up. Jordan Davison, questionable, wound up playing. Don't think we saw him a ton until the second half, but then he got some run. And Alex Harkey not there. And you're talking about losing one of your starting offensive linemen and going into Iowa City, into Kinnick Stadium, against that prideful defense that is darn good, and running for over 200 yards at 7.3 yards a carry. The offensive line, just a bunch of dogs, man. Absolute stone cold killers up front in this game. And Oregon's defensive line also was phenomenally good, not rushing the passer. That, you got to credit Iowa's offensive line. Oregon did have 2 sacks in this game. Tuioti had one. Would have had more if he had been held every other play, but Bryce Betcher had one too. But late in the game, in big spots, Iowa did not face enough quarterback pressure. 100%. We can dissect that later in the week. But Dante Moore wasn't sacked. It was hard to throw the ball. You knew you had to run it a bunch, and Oregon went for 261 at Kinnick. And Dante Moore wasn't sacked. Alex Harkey out. And how about the right side of the offensive line? That has been the weaker of the two sides this year. Those guys played their best game of the season when Oregon really needed it. And it was an awesome, awesome thing to see. I have to go back to Atticus Sappington again. Can you imagine what my mood would have been for the last several hours? What your mood would have been? What the vibe around with Washington's loss? You would have been wondering whether, and fairly so, whether Oregon controlled its own path to get into the college football playoff. But you don't have to wonder that, thanks to Atticus Sappington. He's not the only guy. He was put in that position by the rest of the offense that had just an incredible, incredible drive. We'll talk about that more later on, because Dante Moore had a big, big moment in this game. That throw to Malik Benson is outrageously good stuff. I do wonder, I do wonder, where is that more often? When the chips were down and Oregon had to have a drive, you suddenly pushed it down the field for 50-50 balls again. Don't know where that's been. More on that later. Atticus Sappington, with all the field goal woes in big spots I have watched observing Oregon football in my life, boy, that one felt good. Really, really good. Stepped up and just flat out delivered all day. He hit from 46, 40, and 39. He did not miss a kick. It is not a joke. It's something to poke fun at and such, but it's not a joke that when you play Iowa, rain, shine, sleet, hail, whatever, your special teams have to be a side of the ball that's more than an afterthought. They were in this game because Sappington stepped up and delivered in an absolutely critical juncture. 3 field goals, half of Oregon's points. Dude is just a certified stone cold assassin. It was incredible. Absolutely incredible to watch. And the emotional roller coaster that game was, made it all the more satisfying to win, because it certainly felt at times like Oregon was playing 11 on 12. First, this episode brought to you by our friends over at DoorDash. It is the weekend, and Oregon has won. It's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. I'm, of course, going back to Atticus Sappington. I mean, the difficulty, he made it look easy. But he had an average field goal here of, let me do some quick math. He had a 39-yarder, a 40-yarder, and a 46-yarder. His average field goal length today was 41.6 yards in the rain, on the road, with some wind, and he was nails. Absolute nails. He delivered in a big way. And Noah Whittington, man, what a day for Noah Whittington. All the Oregon backs were over 6 yards a carry. That's awesome stuff. Just really awesome stuff from that trio. That I could list a lot of guys that delivered in this game for Oregon. That trio and Atticus Sappington is where my mind goes first. Just like those guys delivered for the Ducks, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays, and with DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday that you order. Stack it up all season. You could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. Check out DoorDash today. The rarely seen live second segment sip. So one of the reasons that it was so exhilarating to see Oregon win this game is I have long said two things about officiating. One, don't expect them to get it right as often as they should, because they don't. It is clearly too difficult of a job for them. And number two, great teams overcome, or don't let it be in that position. And next week, we can talk about how Oregon hurt itself to be in that position where officials had a big impact on the game. But this was a straight up embarrassment for the Big Ten. I mean, straight up. I did not see the officials' names. I'm not going to come on here and dox them or anything like that. This is also the wild part. A game like that, in which Iowa, I kid you not, in that game, those conditions, how physical it was, Iowa flagged for one penalty for 1 yard. Now, they're a well-coached football team. Kirk Ferentz been doing this a long time. I'm not saying it should have been 8 for 100. But I'm saying I didn't see every single snap of this game, and I watched Oregon get held on several occasions, including critical moments. And the number one thing I always come back to with officiating is you got to get the elephants right, man. The judgment call, one that was going around on Twitter that people were criticizing was the Aiden Breland hands to the face. Okay, that's a legitimately difficult call. Is it the wrong call? Yes. When you see the replay of it. But that's a legitimately difficult call because the guy's face mask is pushed up and his hand is close to it. I'm not that upset at that call. I also want to point out, because I thought in real time, but then went back and watched it again, on the 3rd and goal when Iowa wanted the pop pass and no one was there, I don't think that was grounding. It was definitely close. I think he got outside the tackle box. It's at least close enough to where it's not egregious. He probably got outside. So on those two fronts, trying to be fair here, I will defend the officiating crew because I know that some people, myself included, in real time were frustrated with those calls. Okay? So those are two moments that I'm saying, look, this is hard, and I think those were right. Okay. The number of times that Oregon was held in this game with zero holding flags thrown is unacceptable. And the Big Ten should straight up look at this game tape, show it to that crew, and be flat out embarrassed that almost cost Oregon a football game and maybe a shot at the college football playoff. That is straight up embarrassing. That crew was horrifically bad all night, day, whatever you want to call it. Like, the entire game, they stunk. They screwed up so many big calls. There are a couple that stand out in my head. I know there are others. First one that I want to go to. 4th down and 3 on Iowa's go-ahead touchdown drive late in the 4th quarter. Tatum Tuioti shifts defensively to the left side of the defensive formation, right side of the O-line. He blitzes off the edge. He is flagrantly held. It's not even close. It's right in front of the official. It's taking place upfield towards the back judge. Should be right in his line of sight. Doesn't call it. Iowa converts. That 4th and 3 should have been 4th and 13. Iowa went on to take the lead. And again, all these frustrations that I know you are all feeling, I am here to tell you they're 100% valid. And that should make you feel even better about the fact that Oregon won this game. Because this is one of the most egregiously officiated games I have seen the Ducks play. There's a difference between bad calls and just overall trends. And there were both in this game. So that was one. Another one that led to the Iowa 58-yard field goal. A game decided by 2 points. Iowa got a field goal on a drive where instead of facing 3rd down and I believe 8, in a game where Mark Gronowski threw for 138 yards because it was hard to throw the ball, he goes down the sideline and Ife Obadegwu is inexplicably flagged for pass interference. Not only was it not pass interference, but if you go back and watch that play, Iowa has it's an RPO. It's an RPO shot play. They've got a run concept, and then guys are running, probably choice routes, and he decides to go for a longer shot. They throw the flag. Iowa has 2 linemen that are standing about 4 yards down the field, and that flag wasn't thrown. Those 2 moments are just a couple of examples. Mateo had a free run at Gronowski, was just so obviously held. Again, should have been right in front of the umpire. And he just, umpire, back judge, whatever. Just didn't throw the flag. 1 penalty for 1 yard. Give me a break. That crew was a joke. And that they don't have to come to the podium and face questions for that is completely and utterly ridiculous. And I find to be wildly infuriating. On this show, on my college football show, I make strong opinions and takes all the time. And when I am wrong, or if I get a fact wrong and have to come on and correct it, I am accountable on the very next show or the response. Officials are just not accountable. And I don't want to hear diddly squat from any Big Ten talking head about how there's a rigorous process and officials are rewarded for that. No. Unless you are showing me what happened in the SEC because of that egregious nightmare when Auburn played Georgia at home, where the official is literally suspended. Unless you're showing me that, don't tell me about your rigorous vetting process or anything like that. This game there have been bad calls in other games. I can accept that and live with it. There's nothing you can do. This was inexplicably awful. And then you can go, if you'd like another concrete example, and again, all of these things went against Oregon and they overcame it. And that should make you feel awesome as an Oregon fan, that they have the talent, the intestinal fortitude, the come-togetherness to get through all of those obstacles, injuries, road environment, weather, bad officiating. Oregon's driving down for the win. On 3rd down, Malik Benson toasts his guy off the line of scrimmage, who just grabs his hip to stop him from running forward, and no flag shows up. It was unbelievable. I am not going to go down the rabbit hole, the conspiracy rabbit hole of, well, Oregon's new to the Big Ten and they don't like Oregon and they just wanted Iowa. Unless I have a reason to attribute it to malice, I'm going to attribute it to incompetence. But I am sitting here telling you that was gross incompetence from that officiating crew. who should go back and watch the film and send an email to Dan Lanning and say, Coach, I'm sorry, we missed several calls in that game. Yeah, you did. And I don't think you'll ever get Lanning to say anything about this because it's not a good look. It's not the way the head coach should act, but that's what I'm here for. I would imagine there will be email conversations exchanged between the Oregon coaching staff / administration and the head of Big Ten officiating, and they will point out, you screwed up these calls. Will we ever get a public acknowledgement of that? Probably not. Probably not, because that's, again, the way this stupid scenario works. I cannot stand adults, grown men, just not being held publicly accountable for something. Why am I held more accountable in the public sphere than someone who's making a decision or several decisions throughout the course of a week that have multi-million-dollar career impacting outcomes? How does that make any sense? When Dan Lanning lost to Indiana at home or lost to Washington 3 times in a row, or he had to go to the podium and answer questions about it. Why should an official not have to explain to the people who his calls are impacting why a call was or wasn't made? It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable how bad it was. So that was incredibly frustrating. And it was dejecting at the end of the game for me to watch and feel like, man, Oregon made some mistakes, sure, but I'd put it as much on the officials as on Oregon, who both would have shared blame if the Ducks had lost. That is 100% accurate. There's always something your team can do better and has to do better. But man, that officiating crew was bad. Straight up bad. And guess what? Oregon won anyway. That might be my favorite part about this game. In addition to the Sappington field goal and that moment and everything that was on the line there, the fact that Oregon overcame all of these factors, Ducks versus them, is going to be an absolute banger. Absolute banger. Because, man, it takes a lot. You hear the word culture get thrown out a lot. If your culture isn't good enough, you don't win that football game. You fold at one point or another. You decide the weather's too much. You figure out that you can get away with, we'll just toss it on the officials or what. Nope. Oregon overcame every obstacle that was thrown their way. It was unbelievably awesome to watch. What a win for Dan Lanning and the Ducks. So I'm done with the officiating comments for now. I have thoughts on Will Stein. I have thoughts on Dante Moore. So maybe, just maybe, you should stick around. After I tell you this episode brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Kind of like Isaiah World had Dante Moore's blind side covered. 0 sacks. That's awesome stuff. If you need parts fast for a project, Supply House has next day delivery. You talk about a game changer, that could be Atticus Sappington, Jordan Davison, De'Aaron Hill, a number of guys. Tatum Tuioti, who would have been an even bigger game changer if not for, the fact that he couldn't get a holding call to save his life. But next day delivery is a game changer, and Supply House gives you just that. Join the free Trade Master program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Okay, let's talk about Will Stein in this game. I know there are plenty of you out there that are Will Stein critics. There are some that are more in my camp, which is, I've got a watchful eye, but I'm not in the camp of Oregon needs a different offensive coordinator. I have one major point of criticism in this game, and that's it for Will Stein. This is what this game was always going to look like. My final score prediction was 24-13. It's a little closer than that. Oregon wins 18-16. Now, I could very easily draw the parallel that I've talked about before in the past about Oregon running the ball effectively with a number of different backs and there not being the number of points that should go with that. If you run for 260 on over 7 yards a carry as a team, and you have 3 running backs with at least 7 carries that average over 6 per touch, you should, just as a general rule, score more than 18 points. But when you factor in that it was a downpour and it was just a slugfest out there, I'm not going to hold that against you majorly. Would it have been nice for Oregon to score another touchdown? Yeah. And they came in under the threshold that I talked about earlier this week of 24 points or more to deem it a successful offensive day. So I'm not going to say they went gangbusters or anything like that. But when their backs were against the wall, the offense was there with a couple of really good plays. And the Oregon run game, having as much success as it did, yes, you have to look at the offensive line and say they played incredibly well. They did. They blocked their butts off in this game. In pass pro, no sacks against Iowa's wild work when it's this hard to throw the ball. And over 7 yards a carry is wild work when the other team knows you're going to run it. But you also have to give credit. If you are being fair, maybe some of you don't want to be, that's okay, I get it. For Oregon's offense to be this short-handed, missing one of its starters on the offensive line, shout out to Leak Terry for having the guys ready to go. It's not just about your O-line playing well. Obviously that matters. But Will Stein was making the right calls in the run game all game long, except for one moment that I will get to. But I think generally speaking, when fans were, or when fans are watching a game and you think about, what creative play calling, good play calling looks like, I don't know that a lot think about being clever or making the right calls or executions or game plans in the run game. I think it's thought about more with the pass game, which I understand because obviously there's a big game planning element to that and the chess match between an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator. But it exists more than you realize in the run game as well. And for Oregon to have run the ball this well, that is a major feather in Will Stein's cap. And then the final drive, he called a beauty. There is no other way to see it. Dante Moore executed at a high level. That throw to Malik Benson is big boy football. That's Big Ten football in a nutshell. Close game, on the road, ugly weather, and you've got to fit a ball into a window that's the size of the gap between, I don't know, what's something that doesn't have a big gap? A very skinny window. I don't know what. A peephole. All right, there we go. That's something. That was not my best moment of the show. That's okay. We continue. That throw, that catch from Malik Benson is so outrageously good. So outrageously good. Any sort of catch. The dart that Dante Moore threw to Jeremiah McLaughlin on 3rd and long on the drive that got stalled by the holding call after they were running it so very, very well. It's tough, and on the one hand, boy, you'd like to see him make that play, help your quarterback out. It was a heck of a throw by Dante Moore on 3rd and long. On the other side, that ball is so wet, it is really, really difficult to catch a ball in those conditions, which is why you give even more credit to Malik Benson, I think, than you take away from Jeremiah McLaughlin. Because for Benson to have made that catch in that spot, and McLaughlin, by the way, came back on that rub route that set Oregon up to be a few yards closer. Every yard counts when you're kicking a game-winning field goal. It's awesome stuff. And for DeCorian to have not played in this game and Kenyon Sadiq to have not played in this game, it was hard to throw the ball. They did when they needed to. they did when they needed to. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Cooper Perry also had a 4-yard slant on that drive. But Jamari Johnson was Oregon's leading receiver, 4 catches for 36 yards. But overall in this game, I think that if you're coming away from this game and saying, see, Will Stein's still a problem, see, it's still not good, I don't think that's the full picture. Was it the best offensive day? No, but Will Stein also didn't tell Dante Moore to turn it loose on a difficult throw on 3rd and 14 in the red zone that kept 3 points off the board. So I think that if you look at the way this game was played for Oregon offensively, defense exactly what I expected. Definitely disappointing they gave up that drive, but again, the 3rd and long completion, or 3rd and 5 completion of 40 yards, just a bad play from both Aaron Flowers and Dylan Thieneman. Unfortunately, even with guys as good as those two, that's going to happen. The 4th and goal, Tuioti is there. Is he the best guy to quarterback spy? Yeah, he's probably one of them, honestly, because he's big enough and fast enough, and he is one of Oregon's best defensive linemen. He runs into Mateo. It's just like it's tough. It obviously wasn't the best defensive play call, but did I think it was the worst? No, it's just the execution wasn't quite there. So defensively, though, this is what I expected. I predicted 13 points for Iowa, and they score 16. So right about what I expect. Offense, not quite what I wanted. But again, the creativity and the right calls at the right time in the run game was really good, except for one moment, and I did not like it at all. I get where he's coming from, but it was not just about the execution not being there. But Oregon had a 3rd and 2 on a drive that they were moving down up 5 after the 58-yarder. They're just running the ball down Iowa's throats in a way that Hawkeye fans just can't be used to seeing, no matter who the opponent is. But Davison's feel running through the line is so good. And Whittington ran awesome. And De'Aaron Hill is a stud. And they all were getting touches. And the variance and the timing of those play calls was exceptionally good. And then on 3rd and 2, they went empty quarterback sweep. And I was watching it, yelling out that was going to be the play. Did Iowa see it coming, depending on their film prep? Maybe. But here's why I don't like that call. Number one, you have 3 running backs. Are you going to go to Hill in a short yardage? Probably not. You could use him as decoy, though. You have 3 running backs that have literally carried you up the entire field. Your offensive line has been carrying you up the field. It has just been all run game. You haven't thrown the ball. Taking it away from what has been working, don't love that. Number 2, you present an empty look for a couple of different reasons as an offensive coordinator. Number 1, you want to spread a defense out. Number 2, you want to make them declare to get an advantage in the pass game so that it's easier for a quarterback to know, hey, they know we're going to throw unless it's a quarterback run, but I can more easily read a defense because we're in 5 wide. When it's that rainy and it's 3rd down and 2, what is the threat to throwing the ball? You've run it the entire drive. I don't know which Iowa defender was thinking Oregon was suddenly going to go to the air on 3rd and 2 on a day where Dante Moore had at the time under 100 yards passing. Now, where Will Stein is probably coming from is Oregon has run that play several times this year. They've run the quarterback in a couple of big spots. You think back to Penn State, they converted 2 4th and 1s, including with the game on the line with a quarterback run. That had a running back in, though, who was lead blocking. They tried to go to the edge, and Iowa blew the play up, and Sali Apaga is flagged for the hold. But when you're coming out 5 wide on a day where throwing the ball is so incredibly tough, that doesn't leave the defense to think, wait, which direction are they going? Whereas if you go 2 men in the backfield and flare De'Aaron Hill out, just as an example, Whether you want to make that an RPO or just a decoy, you at least make them think, hey, they could go here or they could go there. But Iowa snuffed it out really easily. I know Oregon's run that well in the past, but guess what? They had Kenyon Sadiq blocking. He's not there in this game. So you have Roger Saliapaga on the edge, who gets called for a hold. It's weird. The officials did know that holding is a penalty. That's crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. But the play call there is my biggest gripe with Will Stein in this game. Your play calling is so limited when it is just pouring like that. And you don't have to have played college football or know that much about college football to know that. You just got to step outside and go, wow, it's hard to hold on to the grocery bags coming in when it's raining like this. Yeah, imagine trying to catch football with guys bearing down on you and trying to knock the ball away. It's really hard. So that play call, if you would like to be critical of that and you are a Will Stein critic, hater, whatever you want to call it, that's totally fine. All in all in this game, I don't think you can have huge criticisms because when Oregon's out, this is what it was most likely going to feel like. When you needed a drive, can you call one? They did. They did. Had a little bit of run, mostly throws. The rub route to McLaughlin to pick up, 5 yards. Those are the huge moments. The execution on the deep shot to Malik Benson. Yeah, I want to see more of that going forward, of course. But that drive, Dante Moore, man, stuff of legends. Just absolute legendary stuff from Dante Moore in that spot. That throw to Malik Benson, the more you watch it, the more impressed you are going to be. And the more you watch it, those of you that are critical of Will Stein will probably wonder, wait, why aren't his numbers better? Why isn't there more of an explosive pass game consistently? Why don't they take those downfield shots when the weather is good? I'm not going to push back on that. I'm really not. But in this particular game, this is a complete team, coaching staff win. And Oregon was just a little bit better than Iowa, which is a darn good team. Oregon with the loss to BYU, or BYU's loss to Texas Tech in pretty dominant fashion. They'll be ahead of them. So Oregon controls its own path to get to the playoff. That's the great news. Also, I can't leave without shouting out this play. Can Brandon Finney be any better at football as a true freshman? I really don't know if he can. I don't know that he can. Oregon had not stopped an opponent getting into the red zone all season. Now, as I pointed out earlier this week, answering a question, the flip side of that coin is they allowed tied for the 5th fewest red zone drives of the season, so it's not some huge issue. But their first stop in the red zone comes on a Brandon Finney forced fumble, landing at the timeout just in time or challenge, whatever. That stuff can get so murky. Like, did they challenge or did they just call timeout and ask him to review it? It's like, I don't know. That can be a little bit of a gray area there. But for Brandon Finney to have been the one to make that play, shoulder pad on the ball, my guy. Just an absolute beautiful, perfect form tackle football play. Brandon Finney, just a football player. Absolute baller. So the field goals, the fumble, the throw to Malik Benson, those are the moments that stood out the most to me. If you have other ones you want thoughts or reaction to, let me know. But man, yeah, Emerald Valley Kush has got it. Finney's an All-American. Yep. That's what he looks like to me. I mean, at the very least, he's a freshman All-American, but I am confused. If he is not an All-American corner, what does an All-American corner look like? I'd love to know. I think the last one Oregon had at corner was Ifo Ekpreolamu, who was darn good. I don't think he was as good as Brandon Finney. So I think that for Oregon to have found a way to win this game, once you saw the weather forecast, you knew it was going to be a find-a-way sort of game. And once the rain started during the game and you realized that it's not letting it was always going to be a find-a-way sort of game. You find a way. And Oregon found a way. So I think I'm going to leave it there. I think that's enough. It's never enough, is it though? Also, okay, hold on. No, it's not enough. I'm not done yet. Dante Moore coming out onto the field after the offense was in position, and then I talked about the play call there. Wasn't good. Doesn't get executed well. 4th down and long. They punt. And Iowa has to go 93 yards. And I felt good in that moment. I felt good about the defense. And they just didn't come through. That can be a gut punch, a final blow, a knockdown sort of moment for a team. And for Dante Moore to just come out and look the way that he did against Penn State, his numbers at the end of this year are not going to blow anybody away. But we're going to remember that he went on the road to a couple of Big Ten teams. Not easy to win at Penn State, is it, everybody? Not very easy. Yeah, not an easy thing to do. Anyway, for Dante Moore, in the 2 biggest games of the year that Oregon has played outside of Indiana, and we all know that was the worst game of Dante Moore's season, by far. For him to have moments of execution in critical, high-pressure spots in road environments against great defenses, man, the confidence in that guy's got to be there. I talked on Friday's show what an opportunity it was for Dante Moore to prove to himself, Oregon fans, the staff, the country, what he can do back there. And no, he wasn't perfect in this game. The interception wasn't a horrific throw. Cooper Perry just got rerouted a little bit, and the throw was that far off. Should he have forced it? Yeah. I mean, you got to take a shot. You don't know how the field goal kicking game is going to be. Like, I can go back and forth on that. But when Oregon needed him the most, it was Dante Moore that stepped up and delivered. Just awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Okay, that is where I'll leave it. So keep dropping your comments. Send me all the notes. I know I probably have 40 DMs or insider messages to respond to. I'll get there eventually, but I got to go do my college football show now because stuff happened over there as well, including but not limited to Washington inexplicably not holding up its end of the bargain in a couple of ways and losing to Wisconsin, which there is one side of me that goes, ha, yeah, don't ever want Washington to win. There's the other side of me that goes, that was going to be a good resume booster, and now Washington will probably not be ranked because of that. You know, maybe we explore that at a later time. But what a win for Oregon. What a great day for the Ducks. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.